call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Johnson, Soboroff, McLean Hill, and Goldsmith are present, and we have a quorum. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. As we all know, this past weekend, hundreds of white supremacists gathered in Charlottesville. They shouted...
Some gathered here. Right. Yep. I'm turning in my car. And some gathered here.
That's right.
So don't start out with that as if that means something to you.
If you continue to disrupt this meeting, I will ask you to leave.
You said we're going to use that to...
If you continue to disrupt the meeting, I will ask you to leave. This is your last warning. This is your last warning.
Sucker, you don't care.
Right.
Okay, sir. I'm now asking you to leave the meeting.
Just like Trump, reading some talking points.
Right.
And I'm not leaving.
You need to leave the meeting,
I'm
sir.
not leaving. You are not going to pimp this issue.
Sir, you need to leave the meeting.
Pimp this issue.
Right.
No, I'm not leaving. You are not going to pimp this issue.
Y'all have to
No.
y'all ain't taking care of
I'm not leaving. You are not going to pimp this issue. I need my hat. Get my hat. Get my hat.
Can everybody be seated, please? As we all know, this past weekend, hundreds of white supremacists gathered in Charlottesville. They shouted racial, ethnic. Mr. Khan, if you continue to disrupt the meeting, I'm going to ask you to leave too. They shouted racial, ethnic, and religious epithets about black and Jewish people, chanted Nazi slurs, and waved the Confederate flag and banners emblazoned with giant swastikas. A peaceful protester, Heather Heyer, was murdered. Two brave police officers, Jay Cullen and Burke Bates. Two brave... Ma'am, if you continue to disrupt the meeting, I will ask you to leave too. If you continue to disrupt the meeting, I will ask you to leave too. This is your last warning. Yes. Okay, now I'm asking you to leave the meeting. Please leave the meeting. The meeting is not continuing until you leave the room.
They do that anyway.
This young lady needs to leave the room.
Really? That's degrading. Why is she a young lady?
So if you do not leave on your own volition, I'm going to have the whole entire room cleared. Is that what you're going to cause to occur? Are you going to inconvenience everyone in this room?
Inconvenience of this whole city.
That's bullshit. That's not cause the attack this person cause. It's still recording.
Okay, we're going to have the room cleared, and we'll take a recess until the room is cleared.
Okay, but don't pretend it's her fault. It's your fault.
Waukesha Wilson, say her name. Waukesha Wilson, say her name. Waukesha Wilson, say her name. Waukesha Wilson. Where's the video? Where's the video?
Madam Secretary, I think we're ready to proceed.
The meeting is back in order.
Thank you.
Open session.
So I want to, again, start with reading a statement about Charlottesville, and I believe at least one of my fellow commissioners has a statement as well. As we all know, this past weekend, hundreds of white supremacists gathered in Charlottesville. They shouted racial, ethnic, and religious epithets about black and Jewish people, chanted Nazi slurs, and waved the Confederate flag and banners emblazoned with giant swastikas. A peaceful protester, Heather Heyer, was murdered. Two brave police officers, Jay Cullen and Burke Bates, lost their lives, and at least 19 others were injured. On behalf of the Police Commission, we condemn in the strongest possible terms the hatred, racism, and ensuing violence incited and spread by these white supremacists. What we witness is absolutely the opposite of everything we value and work toward in Los Angeles, a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive city and society. We are united in our commitment to justice and peace and standing up against hatred.
Yeah, I did write this down so I wouldn't get it wrong. In watching the events this past weekend, I couldn't help but think about my father. He spent 22 years in the Navy and made sure that an American flag flew in front of our house every holiday. He also did 2 tours of duty in Vietnam and took great pride in serving his country, in spite of the racism and discrimination he confronted as a young man growing up in the Deep South. I'm indebted to and inspired by people who fight for what this nation could be and would be were we to fully realize the ideals embodied in the preamble of the Declaration of Independence, that all people are created equally and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Whether it's the fearless men and women who traveled and enabled the Underground Railroad, the extraordinary people, children included, who peacefully stood their ground in the face of water hoses and dogs, the iconic moment when 2 young men stood before the world on an Olympic podium, fist raised, representing their country and striking out against injustice, or today's activists marching behind banners that, among other things, read, "Rise and resist," "Love is love," "Black Lives Matter," "No human is illegal." Their resolve, courage, and persistence is fundamental to what it takes to build a more perfect union. In the wake of the loss of life and other serious injuries from this weekend, I want to acknowledge the heroes that showed up in Charlottesville to stand in opposition to bigotry, anti-Semitism, racism, and hate. And in keeping with Commissioner Johnson's statement on behalf of the Commission, I want to underscore my sincere appreciation for the men and women in law enforcement, especially the members of this department, all of who have as part of their job descriptions protecting the right to protest and the safety of protesters.
How many arrested?
Can we have order, please?
Finally,
Sir, can you please have a seat?
the last thing that I want to say about this, and I appreciate your listening, is every time I look into the eyes of hate, it simply reminds me that a commitment to respect, to love, and to human decency is what will keep us in good stead and what will ensure that we ultimately triumph over it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I'd also like to make sure that we do take a moment of silence for the 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's have a moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you. Madam Secretary, do you want to move on to the consent agenda items?
We are back on the regular agenda. We're on item number 1, election of officers. This item has been continued. Item number 2, consent agenda items. We have no comment cards.
Okay. Would any of my fellow, sir, can you please stop disrupting the meeting?
Back to what you said, commissioners' comments is usually agendized, and we're supposed to be able to respond to what you said.
Ma'am, thank you.
I turned in a speaker's card.
Do any of my fellow commissioners want any of the consent agenda items pulled?
No, I'll move approval. I'll move approval with thanks to the donors.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to approve items 2A, B, C, D, and E. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
So did y'all get that on? Am I, hey, it's no offense to anybody.
Thank you. We're on item number 3, regular agenda items. We have none.
No, that's right, Cynthia. We're supposed to be.
We're on item number 4, report of the Chief of Police, Chief Moore.
You know that, right?
Okay, ma'am.
We're supposed to
Ma'am,
be
we are
able-
moving on to our next agenda
Let
item.
me give my public comment to your
Ma'am,
comment.
please have a seat.
Here's my public comment to your comment, because I have a legal right to give 2
No,
minutes.
you do not.
Yes,
You
I
ha-
do.
you will have-
Yes, I do. Arrest
You
me.
have 2 minutes
So here's
on
what I'd like
public
to say.
Man, I'm
Here's
going to
what I'd
ask
like
you to leave
say.
if you do not have
So
a seat.
I don't care.
You do not
know
get to
I don't
set the
care.
rules here.
So here, you don't
Ma'am,
get to
please.
Trump.
Ma'am,
That's not
please
an
have a
accidental
seat.
use of the term. You don't get to trump
This
the
is your
Brown
last
Act.
warning.
The Brown Act says
This is your last warning. Okay, you have to, I'm now asking you to leave the room.
you can ask. Here's what I'm going to say.
Ma'am, you need to leave the room.
Rhetoric is inconsistent with your actions. Your rhetoric is inconsistent with your actions. If you want to stand for justice, stand for justice. Right. You don't get to decide that only people with tiki torches who chant Nazi slogans are the only racists. When you assail our community members, when you kill our people, that is violence. It doesn't just happen in Charlottesville. It happens in Los Angeles, and you are complicit, Matt Johnson, and you know you are. You are complicit when you try to make up rules that condone white supremacy. White supremacy is not just about explicit acts of what you want to call hate, but it's also racial oppression in the institutions that you.
Okay, we're going to clear the room and we're going to recess again. And
So,
Ms. Abdullah is not allowed back in the room.
Dr. Abner, not Ms. Abner. You are Mr., not Doctor. I'm Dr. Abner.
He's houseboy.
Out of respect for the family, we will re-adjourn the meeting, but if there's another disruption, we will, thank you. Thank you. We'll reconvene the meeting, but if there's another disruption, we will not.
I'm not leaving.
All department personnel, please leave the room, please. Thank you.
You don't get to do a
Stand up for
PR
your community,
move.
Matt
Who wrote
Johnson.
that speech
Be
for
a man.
the 70 sworn officers on your PR team.
There are
This
people
is
who want to be
about
able to look up to you as a
real
strong
lives,
person,
not
but they
about
cannot
rhetoric.
because you've been
You
down
wanna
like a
stand
little
up
boy.
for justice, stand
You're not
up
an
for
honorable
justice.
person, sir.
Matt Johnson, we know your
Remember
name.
that.
Matt Johnson, and our ancestors are coming down on you.
Okay. The Board of Police Commission meeting is back in session. Mr. President?
Thank you. We're going to go out of order a little bit. We're going to start with item 6A2. Then we will go back to the report of the Chief of Police and then public comment and then do item 6A1 and 6B. So if we could go to,
Both session? Those are-
yes. So we're going to take comment now on item 6A2.
Okay, we have 7 comment cards. The first 3, Carlina Hall, Deborah King, Washington, Paula Miner.
Good morning.
This is Carlina Snell, great auntie to
This is Carlina Hall.
I'm sorry, great auntie to C.J. Snell, who mothered him since he was 3. She would like to say a few words on his behalf.
I'm not here to talk about the death of Connell. I'm here to talk about the living part of Connell. Connell was my heart. Connell was very mentally disturbed. I tried to, much as I could, take him all the places, UCLA, SC, Children's Hospital. I took him to all these places to try to correct some of the stuff that was wrong with him. And at the end of the day, I could not correct it. It was a permanent disability. But Connell was a nice, nice boy. Connell, other than Connell running the street out there 5 minutes and smoke his weed and come back and say, oh, you know I'm going to eat all your food, ain't he? And then I'm going to go to bed. Connell would go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. Connell liked to dress. He was all involved in shining. He thought he looked good all the time. He tried. He had his problems with the law. He kind of did break in some homes and stuff like that. They did for, I guess, to buy the weed. Other than that, he was a great, great boy. The day he died, he called me, and he came in. I was in the lane in the bed, and he says, oh, look at your son. Don't I look good? He said, I'm all fly. I said, oh, yeah. I said, get up. He said, oh, I forgot. I can't sit in your bed no more. I said, no, you're too big for that. And he left out, and I never seen him no more until I saw him running down the street from the police. And if I could have stopped him, I would have. Connell was a runner. Connell just didn't run from the police. He ran from everything and everybody. He never came in the front door like normal. He would go, if he was on 108, he'd jump the fence and come that way and come in the back door. He never, if he starts to, we used to go to UCLA, to the brain clinic. They have a big stand there. He and I would be walking, and then he'd leave me, and in 1 second, and everybody's familiar with UCLA, he would be up there in 2 minutes, all those stairs. That's just, he was a runner. They couldn't stop it. The doctor said, you need to be on a farm when he was little, great big farm, and just let him run. He didn't understand not to do these things, although he said to me one day, he says, you know, Auntie, I'm making bad choices. And I said, yes, you are. And he says, well, I don't mean to do it, though. I said, yeah, but you are making bad choices. He went, he registered into trade techs, and he did register into community college. He tried to turn it around. he didn't have the mind to. And regardless to what he could have did or how he did, he would have never been successful in doing that. He didn't have a mind. And that's all I have to say.
We're very sorry for your loss, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Debbie Washington. I was CJ's aunt. I met you, President Johnson, at the National Action Network meeting. And we did have some concerns then, which we still do, when you released the video on CJ. You explained the reason why, you were honest, why you and Chief Beck and the mayor made that decision, and we still had a problem with that. But at least I can thank you. At least you were honest. But I have a few things I'd like to say, too, regarding CJ and what happened to us that day in the family. I thank the sergeant for contacting the family of today's meeting, though it was difficult to refer to CJ as an agenda item. Since October 1st, 2016, when he was shot in the back by LAPD, it has been very difficult, and we cannot forget. The multiple gunshots we heard that day, not knowing our loved one was the target, or the many children and family members, especially his sister, who saw the officers standing, chasing CJ, and knowing he was the target, or of his uncle, who sat side by side when they pulled CJ out of the laundry room after he had been shot, and sat him up and sat his uncle next to him and handcuffed them together as he bled out. We cannot forget that. We cannot forget the emptiness we felt when the ambulance finally arrived and we saw them leave without CJ. Or the coroner's office that arrived many hours later, but no one from the family was allowed to view CJ. We cannot forget the large gunshot holes we saw in the wrought iron gate, knowing that at least 3 of them pierced his body, with one being the fatal shot. We cannot forget Chief Beck holding press conferences stating that CJ turned and aimed at the officers and then was shot in the front, and the bullet came out in the back. But we know all the shots were in the back. And he knew that too, because officers were present at the autopsy that Monday. We didn't get the report for months later, but everyone else knew. We cannot forget that he would have been 19 that year, as his birthday was the day after Thanksgiving. We cannot forget that on the morning when he got dressed, he stated to his mom, and you heard her speak, how you like your boy, because he was dressed for the day. We cannot forget how he used to like to ask me to unload my groceries or wash my car or talk with his Uncle Carl about the fish that got away. We cannot forget that. We cannot forget how he always looked out for his sisters and looked out for his family. Or that he wanted a mentor, he wanted a job, and he visioned living independently, but was faced with mental challenges since birth. And that life was meaningful and worth living because his Auntie Carlina, who mothered him since he was 3, and made him believe that he could achieve, but was totally honest with him regarding his mental challenges. We also appreciate that so many have stood for justice for CJ when it was too difficult for us to speak out, and we needed some essence of peace to keep our young people focused and nonviolent in our neighborhood. It is our prayer that CJ has justice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paula Minor, White Christopher, and Jan Williams.
Can his sister speak? Were you going to speak? Okay. My words certainly cannot be as true and as meaningful as the words of C.J. Carnell Snell's family. And the things I have to say today really go to our commission. I wanted to say these things before you go into closed session and rubber stamp the murder by LAPD of another young black man, C.J. Carnell Snell, age 18. Recently, I had the opportunity to attend the LA County Civilian Sheriff's Commission and saw and experienced a group that truly represented the community. But then those individuals were selected because they represent segments of our broad community, compared to each of you who are Mayor Garcetti's political appointees. Because you're his donors, his colleagues, and his friends, and because you represent him, you are not representing our community. You do not have any prior experience in community policing, or apparently very little interest before you join the commission. And yes, you rubber stamp. I know you don't like for us to say that, but that's what it appears. One of you even admitted voting yes on an item you did not understand and did not ask for clarification. As you all know, the first black president of the commission, Elbert T. Hudson, recently died. He was a member of this police commission in 1963, and he was president in 1966 after the Watts Rebellion. His obituary said he became an outspoken advocate for the black community. He, too, was dealing with the names of black men killed by LAPD in 1966, like Leonard Deadweiler and Jerry Lee Arney. He resigned in 1971 as he became head of the LANAACP, saying he could not serve the interests of LAPD and serve the best interests of his community and his organization. So we research and study, and as you go back into hear LAPD justify another murder, we call on you to have some humanity, to release some of your complicity. And so I will say his name. Say his name, Carnell Snell. Carnell Snell. Say his name. Carnell Snell.
Say his name. Carnell Snell. Say his name. Carnell Snell. Say his name. Carnell Snell.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris White, and I am a longtime resident of Southwest LA. And I've seen everything from the Watts riots to the LA uprising. And it should never be we should never be in fear of law enforcement in our own community. But I'm going to remind you guys of something that you really need to consider. Law enforcement has a long history of injustice by letting people out the back door to jail, turning them over to lynch mobs. People were hung from trees, all because those people who wore a badge and swore to defend the Constitution chose to do something that was illegal in terms of murdering and being an accessory to hanging folks from a tree. Now, shooting somebody in the back is unacceptable. You know, there's no rational reason or rhyme to that. You know, shooting someone in the back. We saw what happened to that man in South Carolina when he was running away and was gunned down from behind. And what did we see? We saw an officer go and put an item next to him, a stun gun or whatever it was that he was placed in there. People don't have any, we don't trust law enforcement in Southwest LA. Never. You know, and because I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been victimized by it. And not just by LAPD, the sheriff too. The sheriff too, you know, I don't want to live in a society where there's not law enforcement, but I want to live in a society that is going to hold them accountable. The penal code for 187 is 187 for anybody and everybody, not just for people that are committing a crime. Because when you decide to kill somebody with a badge on that's unjustified, then guess what? You should be treated just like anybody else and have your day in court and prove that it was justified. Because I don't think it's ever justified to shoot anybody in the back. And let me tell you something. The graves of those who died that way are crying out for justice. And it's in your hands and it's your responsibility, like a doctor takes a Hippocratic oath not to do any harm. Don't you do any harm. Hold them accountable.
Speak that, bro. Say his name.
Snell. Cornell Snell.
The next three speakers, please.
Cornell Snell.
The next three speakers,
Thank you.
Jan Williams, Melina Abdullah, Michael Williams.
We need to say his name a little more. Carnell Snell.
Cornell Snell.
Carnell Snell.
Cornell Snell.
Carnell Snell.
Cornell Snell.
We just heard his aunt come up here and say, Matt Johnson, you lied to her. Chief Beck lied to her. We're calling for you guys to release not just a snippet of the video, release the whole goddamn video where we see these officers shooting recklessly through a gate. What if a 5-year-old child could have been on the side of that gate? They're just shooting recklessly, disregard for the public at all. Shots through a gate means he couldn't see what was on the other side of that gate, but he shot anyway. Who is he in fear? Who is threatening his life if they're on the other side of a gate? Release the whole video, not just the snippet that you think is okay. Release the whole video and let this family see what happened. Let the public see how y'all officers, y'all pigs are out here killing us. Our city is not a slaughterhouse. They had no probable cause to stop Carnell in the first place. Him riding, he was a passenger in the car. They shouldn't have messed with him in the first place. Let's start there. They pulled him over because it was suspicious to see some black teens driving in the car with paper plates. So we don't get to buy new cars. Black people, we don't get to buy new cars.
Come on now.
Why black people can't have new cars? So we got a new car, so it's a probable cause that this is probably a stolen car. You had no right to stop him in the first place. So everything that happened, this officer was out of policy for doing because he shouldn't have stopped him in the first place. It was a violation of his civil rights. This body has the power to change these policies that keep allowing, that you guys keep rubber stamping to say that it was within policy. When one tactic is out of policy, the rest of it has to be. Give Carnell Snell some justice. Give yourself some peace at night. These spirits are going to start visiting you at night, Matt Johnson. Cynthia. Carnell was a handsome boy, a beautiful boy. You see his smile, and you go back there and say it was okay for them to kill him?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker, Michael Williams. Michael Williams, followed by Winnetka Baden.
I just read an article about Amy Schumer where she admitted in public that she stole $1,000 with her sister when she was 21 years old. And it was because she was a daughter of a senator and a white woman, she was able to get it pled down to an infraction, and it's no longer on her record. Stole $1,000 worth of items and got pled down. And I just bring this up because it is an example of the war on our young people. Yeah. That a white woman who steals $1,000 when she's 21, which a lot of kids do, right? Sticky fingers, shoplifting. I know a lot of my friends. I sat down at dinner with people, Asian, white woman, and me, sat down, and they admitted to me how much they stole from shopping centers. And I had to look at them and be like, I can't do that. I could never get away with that. And this is, again, an example of Carnell Snell, who was a young man, who wasn't given a second chance, who didn't even get a chance to have his record clean, who didn't have a chance to do something better. And I know his family came and said he had disabilities and he was trying, but we don't know what would have come of Carnell Snell. That's the issue. I know in my life, there were certain points in my life where I wasn't doing the upstanding thing always. I know there's a lot of people who in their life, they weren't always going in the track that they're going in. But things change. We have to be allowed, black young men have to be allowed, and black people, period, have to be allowed to live and see what they're going to become. So their family can live and see what they're going to become. They should not be taken away from their families before they have a chance to become something. And that's what the LAPD continues to do. It continues to commit war on our young people and kill them before we even know what they're able to do.
Thank you for your comments.
My skin is not my sin. Our skin is not our sin. My skin is not my sin.
Thank you, sir.
I'm a
Please,
builder and
sir.
not a destroyer. Remember that.
Sir, please have a seat.
Hi, my name. Good morning.
Good morning
to everyone. My name is Waneka Vaden. Most people call me Nikki. I stay in the hundreds. I've been around for quite a while. I am a gang intervention. I do intervention and prevention. CJ I've known for a very long time, and I hear what his mother say, his family says, and different other ones in behalf of CJ. And like I said, personally, to know him myself, he was a wonderful kid. He may have had his disabilities or whatever else, but as far as his respect and everything for the community, CJ was awesome. I really take this very hard because, like you say, we all have our ups and downs, and I give back to the community because I've been there. I've done some everything in the streets, okay? But I know we all deserve a second chance. And at this particular point, CJ, what really touched me is because he was with my son and on this case, and I know for a fact CJ was innocent, you know? So we look at reckless, and then I look at, I told my son to do the right thing and go on and turn himself in and let CJ get released. Okay, but then when you look at reckless, and I looking at the whole scenario, because every time I get a call for any killing in the hundreds, I'm the one to get called because I have a license to operate. But looking at the situation with CJ, I look more beyond the fact of you never know what he was going through with his mental distress. But when you say reckless, you look at the police, their tactics, their motives, and the way they conduct themselves out there in the streets. It's very, very negligent, okay, especially to be trained and be professional. First, I feel like they could have took the time. They say he ran in the washing machine, seen him place again. I seen the videos. I was right there and everything else. But these police are trained. Okay, so like I said, but then I also look at, you never knew where CJ's mindset is, and I personally myself, just like I said, when I say reckless, the police is just as reckless inside the jails, okay? And right now, for the things that they had to go through, because I know my son, some of everything was happening, and you know who had a lot to do with it? The police, popping the cells, letting them in, letting the other side of the gang members jump on it. You can come in there strong and powerful on the streets, but you can be a bitch when you get in the jailhouse, okay? And so, like I said, just the thought of knowing he didn't got pulled over, like she said, he had, just because he had paper plates, okay? So, you know what? Think of the mentality that he had to go through, the thing that he just got from out of there. But one good thing about it is CJ came to me. See, I have an apprenticeship program, a resource center, and everything else. He came to me, okay, to be in my apprenticeship program because that's what I do. I deal with all the youngsters in our community. And like I say, I believe everybody have a second chance, okay? And right now, for them to take that chance away from him, when he ran over that gate, them police should have known, because from what I heard, this was a specially trained officer that shot him.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am.
Huh?
Thank you for your comments.
Oh. And I'm not trying to go to jail. I'm just trying to express how I feel. But anyway, like I said, we have to have more morals, okay? And we have to give back jobs. We have to have things for these kids to be immersed in, okay? We have to have unity. You guys need to take the time to sit out here and interact. Okay, and more so, we need to give jobs, better training, and everything else for our community, because other than that, we subject to nothing but death. If you look at a kid when he get out of jail, okay, first thing he do is turn in his head back to back. Hey, right now, they don't know if the police gonna kill him or who's gonna kill him. But right now, we need to prepare and have jobs and better schooling for our kids. Okay,
Thank you, ma'am.
Have a second chance.
Thank you very much.
Oh, we have one final card for.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, please. We have water, please. Thank you.
We have one final card. Show King.
Our skin is not our sin.
My name is Sho. You can call me God's Chosen. That's how you can address me. I'm a poet, and I speak real shit. And I'm not going to be quiet or silenced for nobody. Ma'am, on the end, you ain't even been paying attention. You ain't got to look over here now. Who is she? Who elected her to this board? She not even paying attention when the family was speaking. She don't. I don't know if she on Facebook or something. I don't know. But you're not paying attention to the elders, right? Say his name.
Cornel Sims.
I would love for y'all to say his name. Y'all know why he died, right? The time is ripe. The time is right now. Justice for Cornel Snell begins right now. The time is ripe. The time is right now. Justice for Ezel Ford begins right now.
That's right. That's right.
The time is ripe. The time is right now. Justice for Mike Treese Richardson is right now.
Right now.
The time is ripe. The time is right now. Justice for our communities is right now.
Right now.
Mr. Officer, please come clean. Mrs. Officer, please come clean. Will the chief, the mayor, the governor come clean, because the lives that you take are God's precious human beings. Mrs. Officer, please come clean. Mr. Officers, please come clean. Will the chief, the mayor, everybody come clean, because the lives that you take are God's precious human beings. And we ain't ever going to forget that. You see that sign that says protect and serve? Well, who the fuck you protecting and serving? How was this even constructed? This on a Tuesday when people at work? Y'all just don't want this room packed out. But you better believe organization is in order. Training is in order. And we ain't even going to tell y'all what we doing. You just going to see that shit. Justice for everybody begins right now.
Justice.
And Mr. President, we have no other cards.
Cornel Sims.
Say his name.
Cornel Sims.
Say his name.
Cornel Sims.
Okay, thank you. Can we have order, please? Thank you. So we'll go to item 4 now, report of the Chief of Police.
Thank you. Item number 4, report of the Chief of Police, Chief Moore.
Thank you, Commissioners. And on behalf of Chief Beck, who is at the World Police Fire Games today, I'll provide the following report. As to significant events, the Department joins with the Commission in underscoring your remarks today. We mourn the loss of those in Charlottesville, both the officers as well as the protester that was senselessly killed. Following that event, the tragedy of that event, the Department immediately reacted to a couple of spontaneous, unplanned protests that were there, that was occurring in Los Angeles in support of the victims in Charlottesville, and facilitated 2 marches in the downtown area. We continued that into Sunday, where, again, a few more protests occurred, both at Pershing Square as well as here in front of City Hall. We'll continue to work with organizers to facilitate these marches and these expressions in support of the tragedy that occurred there in Charlottesville. The key to our success in this cooperation will be our ability to garner their support in marching and walking on sidewalks and avoiding the roadways. One of the challenges we have in Los Angeles here with so many traveling, so many commuters and so many people in the street is ensuring that the safety of our protesters. So that'll be one of our primary objectives. You also want to report more positive news.
Excuse me, ma'am. Can you please stop disrupting? If you have a comment on the Chief's comments, please submit a card. Thank you. Thank you.
How about that? How about that?
Thank you.
More positive news, the police fire games have continued. It'll conclude tomorrow night with closing ceremonies at the LA Convention Center. I'm happy to report there's thousands of athletes that have competed, and a lot of good competition, and including a number of members of our department. I want to thank the commissioners for coming out, as well as senior leadership within the department. I also want to thank all the other city partners, city departments that have helped support these games through their city resources. Lastly, there's a shadow on this, though, is that this past Friday we did lose a Los Angeles Sheriff Department Reserve Officer, Jacob Castro, in an off-road cycling accident during the competition. I attended his funeral services yesterday, and remember his service for nearly a decade to LA Sheriff's Department. Generous giant, quiet man who competed not only in the World Games, but was a regular participant and volunteer on the Police Unity Tour in respect and honor of fallen officers across this country. So we remember him in his service. Today begins the start of the LA Unified School District. Many of our officers were at a number of these schools as parents brought their young children to schools. We have continued our public messaging with encouraging parents and those that support bringing their children to school to have a plan to drive safely, provide enough time to drop these children off, and we will continue to, and our extra and added patrols working with LA Unified School District Police to assure the safety of our youngsters as they're coming to and from. Exciting time for them as they start this new school year. Moving into our crime, and then I'll finish off with officer-involved shooting information, but relative to our crime picture, homicides, we closed at the end of this last week with 5 fewer homicides this year versus last, which is a 3.6% reduction. Overall, for violent crime in the city, we have a 3.8% increase. So while we have seen a reduction in shooting violence and homicides and sexual assaults, our challenge remains this year with street robberies and aggravated assaults. And then in our property crime arena, our vehicle thefts, vehicle-related thefts, continue to be on an increase, about 4% this year versus last. And over a 2-year period, vehicle thefts are up nearly 24%. And what the department and it's working with communities, and what we're finding is that a significant amount of these vehicle thefts involve vehicles in which people are leaving keys in their cars. With modern technology, vehicles that are basically built since 2010 forward, and fobs, and it's very convenient to leave the keys in the vehicle, and unfortunately, sometimes that's done for convenience as people park in tandem or otherwise, and parking in Los Angeles is difficult. Unfortunately, those that are looking for transportation have learned that, and we are finding regularly are stealing these vehicles. The majority of them, the majority of these vehicles are being recovered within 3 days, and so these are not sophisticated outlooks. But as we move into the rest of this year, we have an overall increase of 1.3% in Part 1 crime. And in much of that increase in the property arena is in these vehicle-related thefts. So we'd ask people to lock it, hide it, keep it. And then finally, I'd move down to our officer-involved shootings. I want to report that we did have an officer-involved shooting last week. I'll read a brief statement relative to that. And it occurred on August 9th, a radio call in the West LA Patrol Division. Late evening, uniformed patrol officers responded to a domestic violence radio call of a suspect involving a suspect later identified as a Mr. Eric Bogart, who was reportedly armed with a shotgun and 2 handguns. Mr. Bogart had reportedly fired multiple shots at a female victim inside of a residence approximately 20 minutes prior to the radio call. The person calling us to this scene was actually a security guard who was standing by with the victim near the residence. The comments of the call also indicated that Mr. Bogart was intoxicated, and while not suicidal, he had battered the victim. Our uniform officers deployed around the residence, and Mr. Bogart retreated into the residence and barricaded himself, refusing to come out. That resulted in members of our Metropolitan Metropolitan Special Weapons and Tactics team responding, and as they relieved the uniform officers, as was their standard protocol, around the residence, and in the following lengthy efforts to have him surrender, Mr. Bogart stepped out and fired multiple rounds at our SWAT personnel, which resulted in an officer-involved shooting. Mr. Bogart then went back into the residence, and SWAT later entered the residence and found him and placed him in custody. The LA Fire Department paramedics assigned to the SWAT team determined that Mr. Bogart was deceased. as a result of gunshot wounds. There was no officers that were injured during this incident. 3 handguns and a shotgun were recovered from the residence. Force Investigation responded as they do and are handling the investigation, as did a representative from the Inspector General's office, as well as the Los Angeles District Attorney's officer-involved shooting rollout team. That shooting brings us year to date to a total of 33 officer-involved shootings involving hits as well as non-hits. Last year's that number was 26, so an increase of about 27%. This year we have had 12 fatal officer-involved shootings. Last year that number was 13. We'll continue to make these reports to the Commission each week as been requested. And lastly, I'll move into our personnel numbers. Sworn personnel and payroll are 9,973. So civilian personnel and payroll of 2,870. That's with 481 civilian vacancies. We have 401 police reserves, of which 57 are chaplains, and 2,172 cadets. Commissioners, that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any commissioner questions?
No, thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We have 9 public comment cards. The first 4, Prentice Jenkins, Royce Shortino, Paula Miner, and Rudolph Rocker.
Oh, is Mr. Jenkins here? Okay. Go ahead.
I'm Rudolph Rocker, and I just want to say, please release all the footage you have of when you invaded Chris Cornell's neighborhood and executed him. Also, fire Charlie Beck.
Next speaker.
Royce Shortino.
Next speaker, please.
Paula Miner.
Cordell Snell! 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 Cordell Snell!
Next speaker. Sir, your time's over.
He has 40 seconds,
Order.
sir.
Cornell Snell! Cornell
The
Snell!
next speaker, please.
Next speaker.
30 seconds. Snell, Snell. Cornell 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 Snell.
The next speaker, please, is Royce Sorciano here. Paula Miner. Max Harmon.
Say his name. His name. Say his name. I'm speaking on her behalf.
Commissioner, your microphone is not on.
Got it. Okay, next speaker.
Max Harmon.
Ma'am, you can sit down now. Thank you. Okay.
I submitted a card for Chief's report, but my comments really were more directed at Chief Beck, so that's why I decided not to speak.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm going to use my time now for us to have a moment of silence for Cornell Snell because we were unable to do it earlier. Right. Got a minute, 40 seconds. Quiet. Policy that are apparent to the public that occurred as you listen to LAPD tell you the story of why they murdered Cornell Snell.
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker, Max Harmon, followed by Jan Williams and the Red Chief Hunt.
Harmon's not here. Next.
Tut Hayes.
Mr. Hayes? Not here.
Mr. Hunt is here.
Try it again.
Testing.
Okay.
Start
his time again. Thanks.
Very disappointed on how you guys are running the meeting. Statistically wise, you guys are criminals. And if you guys don't pay attention, if you guys don't listen, you guys are going to be over there in federal court. I mean, really be in federal court. I'm going over there to see Dean Pragerson after this because a lot of Ralph M. Brown Act violations have been conducted here at this meeting. Long as you guys call for recess, the lobby's not open, they put people out and things like that. You cannot put people out. And if Matt Johnson has the paperwork from the Superior Court judge, same thing that Mitch O'Farrell and them got in trouble for, and the city attorney's office got in trouble for, you guys are keep on violating that. Number two, the chief report, them cadets and stuff like that, they cannot steal a police car if they were given to the keys to it. You guys are doing this whole thing the wrong way. You guys, the whole city is being run wrong. And here's what's going to happen is that all of you guys going to be indictment in federal court, and you guys go look up, and the city attorney can't save you because they have lost 3 to me, from the Dowd case to the Hunt case to the Hunt case again, and you guys don't get to say what's offensive. You guys don't get to do none of that, and you guys are running the Brown Act in this whole meeting wrong. And if we sue you as individuals, then your house and your pension is at stake here. And this is what I've been doing. They look at Barry Sanders on the $215,000 report in the LA Times. We sued him as an individual, so the city had to settle. If they knew half the law, you guys would be in trouble. Half of you guys wouldn't be up here. You guys don't serve the public, and you guys are not public people. So this is why they don't.
Is that the last speaker?
We have Jan Williams. Is Jan Williams present?
This is the Chief's report. First off, we need to fire Chief Beck for leading the most murderous police department in the country at least 3 years in a row now. If that's not an exemplar, a portrayal of what failure looks like, I don't know what is. So we need to fire the police chief. This body has the ability to do that. LAP, you guys are supposed to be representing civilians, not protecting the police officers' jobs. They have a quote-unquote fraternal order of police that protects their jobs. You guys are not supposed to protect your jobs. Their jobs, you guys are supposed to be representing the community. So when you guys go behind closed doors and you see a community member that was killed, you give him the benefit of the doubt. Let his union fight for those jobs. That's not your position. You guys have the power to change these policies that keep allowing these killer cops to come back into our communities. If they're killing people because they're scared, first of all, they don't need to be a police officer, so get another job. And they don't need to be riding desk jobs, sucking up more resources from the community where civilians could be doing most of this paperwork. They're getting paid $100,000 for what a city clerk would make $40,000. So you guys are totally misusing your position when you continue to allow these killer cops back into our communities. Do something now, change these policies that are protecting the jobs instead of the people. Their union fights for their jobs. Y'all don't have to do that. Fire Chief Beck and give justice to CJ. Justice for CJ.
Justice for CJ.
Justice for CJ.
Justice for CJ.
Justice for CJ.
Justice for CJ.
Justice for CJ.
Justice for CJ.
Fire Chief Beck.
Fire Chief Beck. Fire Chief Beck.
The next speaker, Michael Williams, followed by Gilbert Johnson.
There's a lot of things I have to say about this report. It's that the first thing that comes to mind is that we're on par with as many people we killed last year as this year. So where's the change? What are y'all doing up here? Like, I've said this before, and I've made this very clear, that you have done nothing to stop the killing. This commission, this body, has done nothing since the murder of Ezell Ford, since the murder of Mike Brown, has done nothing, absolutely zero, to stop the amount of people who are being killed by the LAPD. You have done nothing. Nothing has come from this commission body that does that. And that's what you were set up to do. You were set up to be the voice of the people. And the biggest concern of the voice of the people of Los Angeles is, why are the police killing so many people? And how do we stop it? That is the number one question on every LA citizen's mind, especially in the black community, especially in Compton, Watts, all these places that you forget and you abandon. The second thing is, you talk about you're protecting protesters, yet I have been to many protests in Los Angeles, some of them sanctioned by the LAPD, unfortunately, and some of them not. I have never seen as many police that come out. I have never seen the same amount of EMTs, emergency response vehicles, all that. I've never seen that. I've never seen one of them. But you're here to protect. How are you here to protect anyone when you can't help anybody? Police are not trained to help someone in a medical situation. They are not trained for it. They're able to do limited amount of things, and most of them don't do it. So what are you protecting? Who are you protecting? No one. You're there to incite and control the narrative of people.
Next speaker, please.
Gilbert Johnson.
Justice for CJ. My name is Gilbert Johnson, and I'm a lifelong resident of South Los Angeles, and I stand in solidarity and unity with everything that has been stated up here. this morning in regards to CJ, in regards to all of the violence, the historical brutality, the historical injustice that black communities and brown communities have faced for centuries, right? And so we are here demanding justice, and we hope that you take into account the voices that are here. We hope that you take into account CJ's auntie and CJ's grandmother and CJ's sister who is back here, all the community that is here demanding justice. We are still here in 2017 talking about transparency and accountability with the most murderous police force in the United States. What are we talking about? How are we going to continue to push for change and progressive values if you're not adhering to the voices of the people? We need top-down reform. We could start with the Police Bill of Rights, which continues to protect officers that have been accused of cases of misconduct, right? What a lot of people in this room may not know is that when CJ was killed that night, the city was going to go up in flames. That lady right there, Winneka Vaden, and other community activists in the Westmont community were ready to take up arms. We're ready to get Molotov cocktails. We're ready to go hard on the city. And we do not want that. We do not promote that. But this is where we are as a community. Our people are agitated. Our people are fearful of you all who are supposed to be protecting and serving us. I speak for hundreds and thousands of black and brown youth, people of all ages across this nation. And at a time where we have a racist president that is pushing law and order in our communities, we need y'all to stand up for justice for our people. Justice for Cornell Snell.
We have no other cards for item number 4. We're on item number 5, public comment. We have 17 comment cards. The first 3, Etta Hindra, Mr. Jenkins, Hamid Khan.
Next.
The next, Tiffany Guerra, Paula Miner.
So the first 3 were not here?
Etta Hindra, not present. Mr. Jenkins is not present. Hamid Khan.
No, you're going to go when it's your time. Then you're not going to go later. This is your.
The cards are called as I receive them. The cards are called in the order that I receive them, and I receive them.
So I am one of the names that was called, so I'm going to take my time.
Okay, Mr. Khan, if you're part of a sequence, we'll let that happen.
So because we can't count on the LAPD or the commission to do it, the community has been documenting the culture of violence that has existed in the LAPD since the 1960s. And the fact that LAPD officers have for decades engaged in not only sexual assaults of minors and child molestation, but also in domestic violence and rape, both on and off duty. This research supports our demands, and that is that Chief Beck be fired for negligence, an end to the cadet program, and for those funds to be reinvested into the community, an investigation into LAPD domestic and sexual abuse, and the right to reparations for everyone who has been harmed. And now, because you will not talk about those acts of violence, we are going to talk about them. So in 1962 is when the LAPD's Law Enforcement Explorer program was established. In 1974 is when girls joined the Explorer program as LEEGS, Law Enforcement Explorer Girls. They assisted cops on patrol and doing desk work. As a reward for their work, Hollywood cops began taking the Explorer girls, most of them 15 to 16 years old, on overnight weekend camping trips. And in 1974, advisor to the program, Officer David J. Kalish begins to abuse 14-year-old Explorer boy. This abuse lasts until 1979 and is not unveiled until 2003, along with evidence of other victims. In 1976, an LEEG, that's an Explorer girl, complains to LAPD supervisors that the camping trips are little more than orgies. An investigation finds that 6 cops had sex with at least 16 teenage explorers. Officer Michael Casados is suspended for 6 months when found guilty by a police tribunal of engaging in sexual acts with a 17-year-old female scout. In 1982, Sergeant Lee B. Schroyer is found guilty of raping a woman while on duty. Schroyer resigns from the LAPD to avoid an internal police board hearing. He is found guilty of rape and sent to jail for 18 months.
Next speaker, please.
And we are reading from information that we researched that is public record. This is not stuff that we made up. In 1985, a sergeant is investigated for raping a woman. His name is not disclosed, but he is removed from field duty following an allegation that he offered a woman a ride, then raped her in the patrol car. 1986, veteran officer and repeat offender Michael Casados is arrested for sexually molesting a 15-year-old girl over a 5-year period. Casados resigns from LAPD and, due to a plea deal, remains free without bail until his hearing in July and was guaranteed not to serve time. 1986, Officer Al Cunningham is arrested for suspicion of molesting 4 girls between the ages of 10 and 13 over a 4-year period. Charges include felony child molestation and rape. In 1987, Officer Doyle John Craig is charged with 9 counts of molesting teenage boys, many of whom he met while on patrol. The charges are dismissed after it is alleged that the testimony of the victims was ruled inadmissible. 1989, Officer Stanley Tanabe demands to be let into the home of a 14-year-old girl, claiming he heard a scream for help after the girl's parents let him in. Tanabe goes to the girl's bedroom and molests her under the pretense of conducting a search. The family files a complaint, but Tanabe returns to the house 4 weeks later when the parents are gone, and Tanabe is taken into custody, placed on administrative leave, and later sentenced to 2 years in jail. 1982, Officer Garnier Beasley is charged with raping 4 women while on patrol. Beasley also shoots a woman in the leg when she tries to flee from him during an off-duty encounter. While being investigated, Beasley is assigned to desk duty, then sent home with pay. Following his arrest, he is suspended without pay. In 1992, Mayor Officer Victor Felix Ramos goes to his wife's place of work and threatens her with his gun. Again, these are items that we're presenting in support of our request that the cadet program be removed from LAPD because of this culture of violence.
Have you guys forgotten Rafael Perez? Have you forgot about him? Have you forgot about the Hollywood burglary ring with the LAPD?
Sir,
Forgot
thank you.
about them, huh? I ain't forgot about them, though.
Okay, thank you, sir. Stop disrupt, please.
I'm just saying, though.
I'd like to continue with some of the egregious harms that you've caused to our community, but I just want to say, I am a born and raised citizen here in Los Angeles, and for you guys to just stand there and and kill us with no repercussion, without holding the officers accountable, is deplorable. You make it a place that feels unsafe to raise my children in, my someday children, and y'all are fucked up. 1994, Officer Marvin Jackson is arrested for sexually assaulting a 16-year-old Explorer youth. Jackson is knowingly HIV positive. Jackson pleads guilty and is sentenced to 52 months in jail. He's fired from the LAPD. In 1996, Sergeant David Luis Navarro is placed on administrative hold in November for conducting searches of girls aged 16 to 18 and sexually groping them. 7 months later, Navarro resigns from the LAPD. He spends only 36 days in jail. What is that? 1997, criminal defense consultant Bob Mullally leaks information to a KCBS reporter regarding confidential files about LAPD domestic violence. The files reveal that from 1990 to 1993, 79 officers were investigated for beating their intimate partners and family members. Out of 85 cases, 75 showed evidence of a crime. In one case, an officer struck his wife so hard her liver ruptured. In another case, an officer abused his wife and repeatedly raped her 14-year-old niece. Complaints filed include 61 felony assaults, 35 terrorist threats, 28 assaults with a deadly weapon, 20 gun brandishing incidents, 13 child abuse complaints, and 6 rapes. No officers were arrested or prosecuted. And while 4 officers were fired and 19 were suspended, almost 1/3 of the officers were eventually promoted. My fucking God. Following the leak, the Feminist Majority Foundation and the National Center for Women in Policing successfully pushes for an investigation of LAPD practices involving police officers guilty of domestic abuse. My time is up, but please do something. Do something. You are killing us without repercussion. What is that? How can you sit here? How can you sit here and allow this to happen?
Thank
How
you
can
for your
do
comments,
this?
ma'am.
Where are those
How?
predators now? Where are the predators now?
Right here.
Where are they at? Not behind bars, huh?
Fire Charlie Beck in this cadet program and put real job training programs in our school for our kids so they can have real opportunities. Nobody want to grow up to be a pig. Following the leak, Feminist Majority Foundation and its National Center for Women in Policing successfully pushes for an investigation of LAPD practices involving police officers guilty of domestic abuse. In the resulting report, Inspector General Catherine Mader examines 227 cases of domestic violence committed by officers from 1990 to 1997 and finds that many of the investigations lacked objectivity or were otherwise flawed or skewed. So they didn't believe what the wives had to say about their own husbands. In response to IG's report, in August 1997, a domestic violence unit was formed as an arm of the LAPD's Internal Affairs Division. Within 7 months, 6 LAPD officers are arrested as a result of the unit's internal investigations. 1997, Officer John M. Morales is accused of sexual misconduct with a 17-year-old Explorer youth and inappropriately touching 2 others, aged 14 and 16. Rosales is placed on administrative leave with pay, sucking up our resources. And the resulting investigation, Police Chief Bernard Parks reveals that there are 95 allegations against 8 officers. With these 3 female victims, Rosales is acquitted. Rosales is implicated with committing statutory rape against 1 youth and sexually harassing 2 others. 7 other officers failed to provide adequate supervision and committed unidentified administrative breaches.
Can you please state your name before you speak? I'm not calling these names.
Anna, first of all, shame on you all. You're all murderers. Justice for Shijay. 1997, the 17-year-old former Explorer scout abused by Rosales is awarded $1.4 million in a suit against the city of Los Angeles for failing to exercise proper supervision over Rosales in the Explorer Scout program. The LAPD notes that Rosales is no longer with the department. 2002. In April, Officer Joseph Evan Robinson is relieved of duty after raping 3 women within 6 weeks while on duty. Robinson maintained his innocence but was sentenced to life in prison. 2003, a lawsuit is brought by a former Explorer scout charging that the deputy chief, David Kalish, began sexually abusing him when he was 14 years old and continued from 1974 to 1979. A 5-month investigation of Kalish reveals similar accounts of sexual abuse from an additional 5 youth, all of whom were enrolled in the LAPD's Explorer program in the 1970s. 2005, Officer George Stan, an LAPD veteran who ran a San Fernando Valley Explorer program for a year, is arrested for multiple charges of sex acts and sending harmful material to an Explorer applicant. Stan's acquaintance with the applicant began when the boy was 12. The resulting investigation found that Stan molested 7 minors, 2 of whom were involved in the Explorer program. Stan retired from the LAPD following his arrest and was sentenced to 11 years, 4 months in jail. Speaking on behalf of the department, Lieutenant Paul Vernon noted that Stan's arrest would not alter LAPD's commitment to the Explorer program. These kinds of incidents can happen in any organization, in anything dedicated to children, youth sports, churches, synagogues. 2005. Officer Jeffrey Sandwell is arrested of the forcible rape of a 17-year-old girl in his neighborhood. Sandwell is part of the Neighborhood Watch program, whereby his home is proclaimed a safe haven. Sandwell is held for 5 days. An additional woman came forward with claims of assault.
Okay, thank you for your comments, ma'am.
Shame on you.
Shame on you. Shame on you.
And, excuse me, Anna, you would need to fill out a card. I don't have a card for you. Please.
Taking the place of Courtney.
You guys add a new meaning to Kenny.
And I don't have a card for you, Jamie.
Yeah, I'm taking the place of Courtney. And one thing I wanted to identify right now is the negligence that's happening with Matt Johnson and with you, Shane. You guys have not looked up once during this entire time that people have been talking about sexual assault. It seems like you don't care at all, and this is exactly why it continues. It's because people like you who are in charge are neglecting to even hear or listen. That is so gross and shameful. You are so gross and shameful.
Shame on you.
So in 2009, in December, the LAPD cuts ties with the Explorer program, which is Learning for Life subsidiary of the Boy Scouts of America. It transitions to a program run entirely by the LAPD, known today as the Cadet Program. The reason given is the LAPD's disagreement with the Boy Scouts policies, which are discriminatory with regards to sexual orientation and religion. Am I on the right spot? Okay. So in 2010, LAPD officer Luis Valenzuela and James Nichols are accused of forcing a woman to engage in sex almost a year prior. The claim is dropped when, according to the warrant, the woman who made the statement cannot be located. The investigation would be picked up again in a year, but would go nowhere until 2013 when the victim files a lawsuit. In 2011, in November, Detective Oris Pace, a supervisor with the Los Angeles Police Commission Investigation Division, is investigated following complaints from local massage parlor workers. The investigation reveals that over the course of a year while on duty, Pace forced 3 women to undress so he could grope them. Pace pleads no contest and resigns from the LAPD. He is sentenced to 6 months in jail. A video of LAPD officers Ishmael Gonzalez and Alex Nava running a boot camp for young teens surfaces online. The video shows armed officers in uniform screaming at youth and taunting them on a playground. Most kids appear to be early teenagers, but at least one child appears to be at least 6 years old. As of June 2017, Officer Alejandro Nava is still listed on LAPD's website as a contact person for LAPD's JIP.
Shame on you.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am.
Yeah, it's about time you fucking looked up.
Wow. Shame on you.
Right here.
Do you have any kids? Have any kids?
Pastor Q. What happened in, I want to say this before I begin reading, but what happened in Charlotte is the first slaves came here in Jamestown in 398 years ago today to the month. And the whole practice of reconstruction and all of that, the way Cornell Snell was pulled over, profiled and pulled over and executed. The whole practice is linked to the way slaves were treated. Because anytime they rise up, they must be suppressed. And so that practice has not stopped. And law enforcement were the ones that the dominant culture, yes, dominant white culture would use to keep us in our place. That's what you saw in Charlotte. In 2012, Officer Elmer Alex Peraza, a former Marine, is accused by his ex-wife of domestic abuse and assault with a firearm. Peraza and his ex-wife had been married for 8 years and for 8.5 years before their divorce. In the last 3 years of their marriage, Peraza's ex-wife reports she was verbally abused, hit, choked, strangled, and beaten, and that her elderly mother and sister were also targets of abuse. Officer Nicholas and Valenzuela are relieved of their duties but remain employed as they're investigated for sexual assault of 4 women over 5 years. 4 women over 5 years. Many of assaults occurred while the officers were on duty, armed, and in uniform. Some took place inside a police vehicle.
Shame on you. Shame on you. Predators didn't miss.
Ma'am, can you please state your name, please?
My name is Mila Mahone. So far in this room, I've seen officers uphold walls as they lean against them, as well as their telephones, the body language, some of the lack of eye contact. It says a lot about the culture in the space that happens in this room. This is my first time, and it speaks volumes. I'd like to proceed. 2013, Officer Miguel Angel Scarpatera is found guilty of luring his neighbor's 2 children, ages 5 and 8, into his bedroom, where he committed a lewd act on the younger girl and attempted a lewd act on her sister. This officer is sentenced to 3 years in jail and resigns from the LAPD. 2013, a 27-year-old woman is sent to the hospital after officers David Shin and Jen O placed her in handcuffs, put her in the back of her vehicle, then drove around while one officer sexually assaulted her as the other drove the car. The assault victim was awarded $3.5 million for damages, but the officers were never charged. 2014, Officer Daniel Han Chun is arrested for battery of a young teenage relative, his fucking relative, who is left with welts and bruises on his shoulders and back after being hit by Chun repeatedly. Chun stated that the beating was due to misbehavior and poor grades. Chun pled guilty to the battery. He is placed on leave with the LAPD and never serves any jail time, presumably paid leave. 2014, LAPD detective of sexual assault crimes, that's rich, Dennis Dare, is found dead in his car after committing suicide. 2 adult relatives of Dare had recently accused him of sexual abuse that occurred when they were young teenagers. In one case, the abuse was sustained for numerous years. 2014, I have 12 seconds left. This is disgusting. There's a 26% increase in the amount of police-engaged shootings from last year that needs to be addressed. This seems to perhaps be the place to do so.
So what you've had is a timeline of sexual assault, child abuse, and domestic violence that has been going on, and we've only gone back to 1962. This is where the history goes. So I want to thank people who researched this. And we can keep on going on and on and on because, it talks to 2014, 2015, 2015 again, 2017. LAPD Officer Clifford Proctor is charged with domestic violence and misdemeanor battery against 2 women in Orange County. And then again, Officer Robert Kane is accused of a statutory rape of a 15-year-old. So what we have here is not just an isolated incident, but this is a culture of violence. And when we talk about shootings and when we talk about murders, it is very much related to this kind of predatory, gender-based violence. Because in any system of patriarchy, the way the LAPD operates and this institution operates, this is what will happen. Because a human body and a human agency doesn't mean anything to this institution, doesn't mean anything at all. Last week, you were not present, Cynthia McLean-Hill. The rest of your colleagues approved almost a $400,000 grant for the cadet program. Knowing what is going on, the communities are asking them, pleading to them, requesting to them, use Shane Goldsmith as a change agent, as the president of Liberty Hill Foundation. How do you even advocate to your donors and funders that you're sitting in a position and rubber stamping on a document and giving them more money to engage in this kind of a lewd act and this kind of a behavior? This is what we are saying. The argument here is do not stop investing in our children. The argument is that disinvest from the police in the investment of our children. The argument is that the children and young people are themselves very qualified. Youth Justice Coalition, various other groups have these programs where they're helping young people build lives. Police is not a place to do that. They are not capable of doing that because what they do is that, this is, and we would need hours and hours to speak about
thank you for your comments.
Let me finish. About the emotional trauma and the scarring that these children have faced.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more speakers on
The next 3 speakers, Melina Abdullah, Not present. Max Harmon, not present. Akili, not present. Rudolph Rocker.
Hayes Goldsmith, if they have threatened you or your family to stay silent,
Sir, stop disrupting the meeting.
I give you my word, I'll
Sir?
1,000 people or more.
Let David. My name's Rudolph Rocker. They, them, pronouns. I am a disabled human being. I don't even like that term because there is nothing wrong with us. We are just different. However, this society thinks that there is a lot wrong with us. And this society, because they think there's a lot wrong with us, they try to execute us. When we act out of line, when we don't act like those people on the billboards, those people who are seen as quote-unquote normal, we are shot or we are put in institutions where we are tortured. And it is disgusting that we are treated that way because we are human beings. We deserve a decent life. We deserve to be treated as human beings. I know that there are very few people, there are not that many people in the world who are treated as human beings, but that is disgusting because everyone deserves the right to a decent life. I don't have any more words to say. Justice for CJ.
My brother deserves a longer life.
You want to speak? Speak.
Yeah, my name is Katrina Snell, and I'm Carnell Snell, little sister. Oh, and I do think that he deserved a longer life. I do think that the police were wrong LAPD was wrong for killing my brother, and I just wish he was here, and I wish that you guys understand that he was young. I'm young. I'm the same age as my brother, and I miss him. And maybe you guys should just take me too, because, that's my brother, and I wish he was here. You know what? I don't want to be here without him. And you guys really affected my life very hard. You guys really did something very horrible to my life, and I already had a rough life. CJ did too.
Very sorry for your loss.
Shut up, man, Johnson.
The Red Chief Hunt. Ted Hayes. Michael Williams.
Again, you've done zero, absolutely nothing. I came to you when you first were appointed, Matt Johnson. When you were first appointed president, I said, I want you to see if you can brag on yourself a little bit. Give me, from the time Ezell Ford died, what has this commission done to stop the killing of unarmed people and people in Los Angeles? You have still not brought me that report. You have still not had that report, because you know it is absolutely nothing. And if you had done something, if you had charged the officers, if you had changed policies, maybe her brother would be alive. So don't tell her you're sorry for her loss, because you're not, because you don't do anything. You sit up on this board, you arrest people who point out valid Brown Act violations that this board commits every day, and if you police were actually upholding the law, you would be up here arresting them, because if you know anything about the law, a Brown Act violation is a federal offense. And you commit it every single week. And you're going to sit up here and say, I'm sorry for your loss, when you don't do anything to stop the loss. You do absolutely nothing. And we are on track, we are on par with how many people we've killed last year as this year. We have even more officer-involved shootings than last year. And you sit up here week after week, and you look at the families, you look into their eyes, and you talk about, I'm sorry for your loss, when it didn't have to be a loss in the first place. If you want to do your job, if you actually do something. Don't sit up here and say, I'm
We have no other public comment cards. We're now on item 6A1.
Ma'am, did you have a card? Did you want to speak? Sure, go ahead.
They let you pass here. They let you pass here. But they wouldn't let my freaking auntie go past there. Look at that. They did it. That's crazy. That is so
They made them walk all the way around.
That's so fucking crazy. That's crazy.
You see that? I saw that.
I swear to God, that is so fucking crazy, dude.
It's okay for
I'm about to go nuts. They about to kill me next. I swear to God. They about to kill me next. I'm about to go nuts. I swear to God. They got my brother fucked up. On God in heaven. Got me fucked up. My mother fucked up.
Ma'am, can you please state your name before you speak?
My name is Marilyn Fuss. I'm a member of National Action Network, which is a civil rights organization. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Almost every day I write or I'll make a phone call to a member of Congress asking them to change the way they vote because of who is in charge right now. And I'm going to ask this commission to do the same thing. Change the way you vote. Change the way you've been voting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, my name's Mike. I want to ask, since the way we've been treated this 398 years and almost 400 years, why don't y'all let the black people go, let us become an independent nation of our own, start our own police department? I've been trying to talk to some of us to come together and do that, and walk out on y'all, because we don't have no rights, we can't get no jobs, can't get no businesses. There's not one black gas station in Los Angeles. I just want to separate from y'all, because there's no justice here. So, like Moses said, let my people go.
We have no other general public comment cards. We're now on item 6A1.
Can we have order, please? Can we please have order? Thank you.
We have Paula Minor and Ted Hayes on item 6A1.
6A1.
You spoke on 6A2.
Okay, so then let's go to 6B. Any comments on 6B?
We have no comments on 6B. There are no other. The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss items number 6A1, 2, and B in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Sorry for a loss? What's wrong with y'all? I want to know what are you guys going to do for my brother's death? What are you guys going to do? Did we do anything to you guys? Did what we said change?
Ma'am, so now we will go into closed session.
Wasting our time, our breaths.
Ma'am, now we will go into closed session. We will get a presentation of all the facts and circumstances around the case. We will review the officer's actions.
But when you guys do that, hopefully you guys have something that we want to hear, because what you guys obviously have to say is not what we want to hear. So obviously when you guys
All we can do is review the facts against the policy and make an honest and fair determination of whether or not the officers acted within or out of policy. We will come back after we have done that, and we will report on our findings. You're welcome.
Obviously,
You're
that
welcome.
They act without whatever you just said was wrong. Period. That was wrong. They
Well-
shot through a gate and they shot my brother 5 times in his back.
We are going to go now and review all the facts and evidence, and you're welcome to stay here, and we'll be back probably in about it.
How long?
It takes as long as it takes, and we take our time. And
Hurry it up, because he's been dead for almost a year now. So what's taking y'all so long?
Are you gonna block it out of your head that you shot him in the back? You're gonna pretend that you don't know that? You're gonna block it out of your head when you're writing down on that paper?
Just let them go, because they're not listening. They don't care. They literally did not want her to ask a question. Go ahead, do what you're gonna do, because we know what you're coming out here to do is say.
Would you hold up again?
His sister's outside. She's getting checked in. Can we hold off until her sister gets into the room?
The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. The Executive Director will report out.
As to item 6A1, a head strike 060-16 involving TJ Hall, tactical debrief, 1 police officer 3, 1 police officer 3+1, and 1 police officer 1. Less lethal use of force in policy, and both of those decisions were unanimous, 5-0. As to 6A2, officer involved shooting number 063-16 involving Carnell Snell.
No, his name is Carnell Snell.
Tactics, administrative disapproval, 3 police officer 3s. Drawing, exhibiting in policy, 2 police officer 3s. Lethal use of force in policy, 1 police officer 3. Decision unanimous, 5-0. As to item 6B, the report out is the Board of Police Commissioners have appointed as the acting interim Inspector General, Assistant Inspector General Django Sibley, effective September 5th, 2017.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor? Thank you.
Don't worry, Patty. This isn't going to hurt me one bit. Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Shapiro in beautiful Encino, and you're watching LA City View, Channel 35. Our city, our channel. Open wide.
Hi, I'm Christy Odom in Los Feliz. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35. Our city, our channel. Would you like a mustache with that?
This is John Clayton standing in front of a classic World War II aircraft called a B-17. This particular B-17 is called aluminum overclock.